I'm very honored to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Abraham Worenklein. As many of you already know, Dr. Worenklein is the chairman of our Continuing Educational Credits Program. And over the last year, in organizing this conference, Abe and I have become friends. Although Dr. Worenklein lives and works in Montreal, and I'm in Toronto, oftentimes we would find each other talking about the details of this conference at 3 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. He has been a pillar of support for me, and I respect and admire him so much. He's not only one of the most brilliant professionals I have ever had the pleasure and honor of meeting. He has a wonderful sense of humor, and he has had a profound impact in helping children suffering from parental alienation syndrome. Abraham Worenklein has been in practice for more than 30 years as a clinical and forensic family psychologist who specializes in the evaluation of high conflict and highly litigious situations involving parental alienation, child sexual abuse allegations, and relocation disputes. He has been declared an expert witness by courts in Canada and the United States and has presented at professional conferences in Canada, the United States, and Europe. He has testified in more than 600 trials and has been an expert witness in some of the early groundbreaking cases in Quebec on parental alienation. Dr. Worenklein received his PhD at the University of Montreal and is a professor at Dawson College in Montreal and an adjunct at Concordia University, where he has taught forensic psychology, psychology, and the law, etc. In addition to the high conflict family evaluations that he conducts, he also has been certified as a family mediator with advanced training. Besides being licensed by the Order of Psychology in Quebec, he is also a member of the Canadian Register of Health Service Providers in Psychology and has a certificate of professional qualification by the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Abraham Worenklein.
Thank you, Joe. After hearing that introduction, I wish my parents could have been here to hear it. My father would have been very proud of it, and my mother would have believed every word of it. I recently, a couple of months ago, I was in New York, and I spoke to a group of approximately 40 to 45 women from the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all of whom have absolutely no contact with their children or very limited contact with the children because of alienation. And I think, about what I read and what I hear, that PAS is a ploy, a manipulation by men in order to get custody of their children. This is blatantly false. Women are victims of parental alienation the same way that men are victims. While we heard last night Pamela Stewart Mills, as she said, I had been involved in her case in Quebec with Judge Gomery basically providing a landmark decision where there was a change of custody, which was upheld by the Court of Appeal. I must tell you, it's very frustrating for me because I think that there are not enough professionals who are willing to basically take a stand, not sit on the fence. And I think the primary reason is because the danger of complaints to the licensing body is so high in cases of parental alienation. I feel for all of the parents here who are victims of alienation. When one loses a child because of death, and one loses a child because of alienation, both of which are incredibly difficult. And I'm not about to say that one is better or easier than the other, but I will tell you that, when a child dies, it is beyond our control. There's nothing that we can do. Whatever reason there was for that to have taken place, from a religious point of view, is not something for us to debate. It's something that we can't understand. It happened, and it's best not to question. However, when I see so many parents who are victims of alienation, where in fact we can do something about it, it troubles me greatly that some of the legal professionals, as we had said, I believe before yesterday, are aiding and abetting. Part of the problem is, and then I'll get into my actual topic, but let me ventilate a little bit. Part of the problem is that I think that to a large extent, children are empowered too much. I believe in children's having rights. I remember a parent, a father, coming up in front of Judge Gomri. I was in the court at the time, and he was asking Judge Gomri, and you don't do this to Judge Gomri, "Do you believe in parents' rights?" And I often am asked that question, and Gardner so clearly put it as one of his 8 criteria. I say, let me explain something to you. I am not a legal professional. I am a mental health professional. I am here to deal with children's needs. And it is the need of children to have a relationship with both parents unless there are extremely severe situations and conditions which cannot be corrected even though attempts have been made. When I hear a week ago a child, a 13-year-old girl, telling me that her attorney told her, "Do not text message your mother." This is a girl who refuses to see her mother, to have any contact with her. And I asked her, well, if you don't want to see her, what about text messaging her? And when she, of course, discussed it with her attorney, the attorney, which infuriated me, said, "Do not text message your mother. It could be used against you in court." This is what the child told me, and this is what I included in the report. Let the judge read it. Let the judge get a sense. What we need to recognize, and I'll finish with this, is that while rules without relationship equal rebellion on the part of the child, relationship without rules also equal rebellion. And unfortunately, many of the alienated children are given messages directly, implicitly, explicitly, that they basically do not have to. How often, and I've said this to at least 50, 100 times to a parent, what would you do if your child came to you tomorrow and asked you and told you, "I don't want to go to school today. In fact, I don't want to go to school for the rest of the week or the rest of the month"? What would you say? And how often have these parents told me, almost identically, "Hey, that's different. This is the child saying it." I said, let's understand. I agree with you. It is very different because, in fact, this child's not going to school for a day or two or a week is not as bad as the child not having a relationship with the parent. Thank you so much. I feel a lot better. The topic are the themes used in parental alienation alignment. I'm going to cover some of my own findings. I've done many of these cases, whether it's a sexual abuse allegation, whether it's basically a parental alienation without this, whether it's a relocation case, you know, for the purpose of distancing the child from the parent. And I must add to that, recently, I've had a couple of other situations of parental alienation. And I don't know how many of you have dealt with these, but recently I'm getting quite a few, where the basis of the alienation is based on religious differences. I have a fundamentalist Christian family where that has taken place, where the children have been distanced from one of the parents, or attempts have been made because of religious differences. I've had a situation actually with a Muslim family, and I've had a couple of situations with religious Jewish families. So I've basically dealt with the gamut. It's something that's coming up, and if we have time, we could get into that, because that's very, very extremely sensitive to the parents in that situation. Whoops, I guess I got to use this. Now, the previous speaker, you know, I felt like walking out. I said, that's a hard act to follow, not just in terms of the content, but the humor. So thankfully, I have a couple of cartoons in there. Here you have two kids, not in play therapy, but they're in the sandbox. I'm staying together for the sake of my parents. How often we hear that. My mom has a new boyfriend, my dad has a new girlfriend, and all I got was a new therapist. I think I missed one, actually. You know what, let me just go back. There's one that's... This one's a prize. I put them up after the divorce so that he knows his father is still a part of his life. Yeah, I thought you would enjoy that one. But hold on a sec.
At least he's got an image. Mine were told to tear mine up.
We'll get to that one. If the alienating parents, and I've said this before, if alienating parents, come on, let's work here. If the alienating parent would love the child or children half as much as he or she hates the other parent, the kids would be in great shape. If feelings would not cloud judgment, there would be few cases of alienation. And we'll get a little bit into why alienation takes place. It is critical to differentiate, and I want to be very clear, the alienated child who persistently refuses and rejects visitation because of unreasonable negative views and feelings from other children who also resist contact with a parent after separation, but for a variety of normal, realistic, and/or developmentally expectable reasons. Too often in divorce situations, all youngsters resisting visits with a parent are improperly labeled alienated, and frequently parents who question the value of visitation in these situations are quickly labeled alienating parents. I have to tell you, this is something that I find, unfortunately, in the court system, which basically gives judges a very bad taste, so that when they hear alienation, they often too quickly dismiss it, even because they see that there are valid reasons. When we use alienation, we got to make sure that there is alienation and not just a refusal for valid reasons. And Kelly and Johnston, and I don't want to read it out loud, they go into quite a bit of detail in terms of some of the reasons for it. according to Warshak, the three components. Gardner has his 8, which we've discussed earlier in the conference: rejection or denigration, rejection is unjustified, and it's a partial result of the non-alienated parent's influence. That has to be considered, because often the alienated parent plays a role in perpetuating it. And I forget the name of the Dr. Seuss book. I think it's Horton Hatches an Egg. That's what I said. That is what I said, isn't it? And there's a story where a bird it hatches an egg, or is about to hatch an egg, and to lay an egg rather, and the bird lays the egg, but has to fly away. There was an elephant who was willing to sit on the egg until the egg hatched. Hopefully wasn't sitting too hard. Gradually, the egg hatches, and out of the egg comes an elephant-like bird, which began flying but looked a little bit like an elephant. When the bird, the mother of this elephant-like bird, came back, she did not recognize the child. The child did not recognize the mother. As tough as it is, you gotta hang in there. You gotta send the cards. You gotta maintain contact. Birthday presents, although it is so frustrating. Yet I've seen in some kids where basically, I can't take this. I've seen a couple of cases, one case that I remember recently, where the child told the father, "If you couldn't put up with my mother and you had to leave, what about me? You left me, you just took off." And what about the parent that tells the kid, which we'll look at, "If you don't come with me and visit with me, I am going to get married. I am going to have other children, and those children will be my only children." This energizes the alienation, because in fact there is real rejection. Inducing parental alienation syndrome in a child is a form of emotional abuse. In a way, it may be even more detrimental than physically and or sexually abusing a child, according to Garbarino and Stott. This is from the judgment of Judge Gomery, 1991, Quebec, upheld in appeal. This one is mind-boggling. 1991. Hatred is not an emotion that comes naturally to a child. It has to be taught. The person who has taught the children is their, in this case, father. They would be better off if he were to be removed as an influence upon their development until they are better able to withstand and reject his negative attitude. Hello? Defendant has deliberately poisoned the minds of his children against the mother that they formerly loved and needed. In the court's opinion, a father who would act in this way represents a grave and persistent danger to the mental and emotional health of his children. In that particular case, the parent had 4 children. When I interviewed the 4 children individually, the language was identical. The order of complaints was identical, and Judge Gomery saw that. Now, in terms of themes used in terms of how a parent does alienate, a lot of the material was taken from Claymore and Rivlin in the book Children Held Hostage, which is wonderful. A lot of it is taken from cases that I've been in and from some of the colleagues that I've spoken to. One of the main ones is denial of existence. The child comes back from the other parent's home. There's no discussion. That person cannot be mentioned. Don't mention his name here. Don't mention her name here. Do not discuss what you do. The denial of existence. Body language in the presence of the other parent and the child. The way, "It's your father. It's your mother," and then a dirty look on the face. Kids read that very well. Destroying the photographs of the other parent. I remember a case where the child told me that any picture in the house that had both parents in it, the picture of the father was cut out. There was a hole by the face, not allowing the child to have a picture of the other parent in the room, not like that cartoon I showed you before. And by the way, in some cases, I recommend it. I don't think there's a problem with it. The child's identity comes from both parents. For the child basically to believe that one parent is all bad reflects on the child. I had a case in Quebec, was in court for 5 weeks. It was a cult case. The child was told by the mother, "Your father is the son of Satan." The kid comes to me when I interviewed with the child. The child says, "If my father's the son of Satan, hey, I'm the grandson." The child was also told that the reason that he was terminally ill was because he didn't follow the rules of the religion. The child subsequently died. And the judge, by the way, and I remember the woman saying, "Freedom of religion, freedom of religion." And the judge, this was outside north of Montreal, the judge said, "You're absolutely right, madam. We believe in freedom of religion. We live in Canada. You are more than welcome to follow any religion that you like. But for this child, if the child is not out of that school that he's attending right now, there will be a change of custody as of Monday morning." The kid left the school, by the way. Very sad case. Not relaying messages. How often do I hear it? "My father never calls." Let me go with the mothers for a little bit. "My mother never calls. My mother never sends me a present." And they have documents and they show me, "Here's the registered, here's the receipt, I sent it. Here's a copy of the emails I send. Here are my telephone bills." So not relaying what you're doing. You're not necessarily saying it, as Gardner puts out, in a conscious way. You're doing it indirectly. And these parents often will come saying, "Hey, I've never done that. What are you talking about?" It's not only what you do, it's what you don't do. It's an act of omission, and there's an act of commission. Not acknowledging the presence. This one's so common. The mother comes, the father goes, they go to the soccer game, the hockey game. They're right there. School assemblies, parent-teachers meetings. How often have teachers and principals told me, "What a waste of money. I got to have a meeting with him and I got to have a separate meeting with her. We're going to say the same thing." Because the kid doesn't want it. We all know kids, alienated, not alienated, it is important for them to see both parents at the school meetings, at the hockey game, at the soccer game. Even if they don't acknowledge, they register that you were there. And that's why we have to continue. And one thing that I will tell you, often the parent, the alienating parent, will say, "No, it's disruptive. I don't want, it's my time with the kid. He shouldn't come to that. He shouldn't be there. He's not interacting with the child. He's observing the child." This is important for the child's development. We mentioned before Michael Lamb. You know, he's written several books. He's upgraded his book. He's updated his book, The Role of the Father in the Child's Development. Phenomenal in terms of the effect on the child's educational achievement, emotional intelligence as well, of having, and he gives statistics. And I always cite those statistics in my reports when it deals with this. Reinterpreting positive events into negative events. Something positive. The reason that your mother showed up is because I guess she knows it's going to court, or whatever it is. No, the reason the mother showed up is because she's interested in you. No, but that's misinterpreted. Sidetracking a child from discussing positive interactions with the other parent, leading the parent to interpret that the child did not enjoy the time with the other parent. You know, we heard about the Fowler, review of the questions. We take a look even at the McMartin, questions, and we see, of course, you're going to get the way you ask the question determines the kind of answer you're going to get. Let's understand, the children love both parents. When they are put in the middle and they have to go back and forth, I ask parents, if I were to ask you, you have 3 children, if I were to ask you, which child do you love more? You'd look at me and you'd say, you're a moron. What are you, stupid? How could you ask me a stupid question? Why do we do that to kids? Why do these parents make the child choose which parent they love more? And often they go, and I hear it often in custody cases, in evaluations. I want to live, mother brings the child, and that's why you always have to make sure that each of the parents bring the children. And by the way, while I'm going to add that, and don't look only at what the child says, look at what the child does. So for example, I remember I had a case where a mother relocated from Montreal to France. The mother was supposed to bring back the child to Montreal for Christmas vacation and for the majority of the summer, which never happened. And finally, the father, took action, and letters came from the child, phone calls came from this 8-year-old child. I don't want to see you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm so happy here. Life is wonderful. My stepdad is wonderful. I don't want to see you. And this has been going on again and again, and letters and cards. Please don't do this. I don't want to see you. I asked the father hadn't seen the kid for 3 years. I asked the father, what do you think? I mean, I look at the letters. I hear copies of the telephone messages left on your voicemail. What do you think is going to happen when the child sees you? The father, without blinking an eye, said that I predict, I had such a great relationship with my daughter. She's going to go flying into my arms. And again, I looked at what, was said, and I looked at, and I said, okay, and I waited outside the office, outside the building with this individual at the time that the child was supposed to come to the office. And, needless to say, the kid went flying into the father's arms, notwithstanding what the child said. So just because the child says, I don't want, why are you putting the child under pressure? It's tormenting. This is a form of psychological abuse. You hear what the child says. And again, you have to watch, because saying and doing are totally different things in these cases. Not informing the other parent of important dates and events also may signify to the child that the other parent does not feel that the target parent is important. Hey, the guy didn't know about the school appointment, didn't know about the doctor's appointment. I don't know. I really don't know why, your father, your mother didn't show up. I don't know. Hello? She wasn't told. He wasn't told. But the child does not know that. So it's built up again and again and again. Adding insult to injury. The alienating parent may also tell the child when the parent does not show up for an event, and that the absence of I'm sorry, I did this with voice recognition, I apologize, and that the absence of a parent is typical since everything comes before the children. And how often do I hear that as well? Now, when we take a look, and I mentioned this, they do want the parents to be there. The only reason that I find that a child does not want, I don't say the only, I'm sorry. In most times that a child will say that they don't want both parents there, it's because they're afraid of the conflict between them, and they might get embarrassed. But again, one stays here, one stays there. I think that the children do like that, and they like that extreme quite a bit. I will also tell you that by excluding the child, by excluding the other parent, what you're telling the child very clearly is that that parent does not care about you. And basically what you have to understand is that these kids remember this, and they have this, and when you meet with the child afterwards in terms of deprogramming, they often give A, B, C. I recently had a case with a father that's living out in Vancouver, and the mother's living here, And the child told me that basically he's never tried to call. The father pulled out telephone bills to show me how many times that he has tried to call. And when the child saw it, when the child was shown it, the child was infuriated. I'm sorry, it wasn't Vancouver, it was Manitoba. The child was infuriated with the mother. And as we know, and as we heard from, as we've read from Dr. Baker and other people, that basically they often get turned off from the parent who is doing the alienating subsequently. That's not always the case, but that's very, very frequently the case. Now, if we go on, oh yeah, here's one. How often do we hear that the emergency number in school does not include the other parent? Often it's the step-parent. And by the way, another thing which I don't have here, I don't believe I have it here, another thing that I find is that often, gradually, it's not daddy or mommy anymore, it's Bob or Jennifer, the first name. It takes away, and that is not discouraged by the alienating parent. And that, again, is the denial of existence. Well, you heard the statistics. Clayward and Rivlin have found that mothers are more likely than fathers to present the children's stepfather as being the children's father on educational records. I see that, but I got to tell you, I see it both ways too. I mean, it's not just one or the other, although I do find it more with mothers. Indirect attacks. Extended family. Very often, Gardner, I believe it was number 8 on his list, on the hit parade, very often the child will knock the cousins, the grandparents, the brothers, the sisters. I had one a couple of months ago where basically the child told me, this is a 9-year-old child, who told me that my uncle, is a member of the mafia. And I said, what do you mean? He says he does things that are not right. And I said, and how would you know that? I said, because when my mother sometimes reads the newspaper and sees about a crime, she says, I wonder if Uncle Joe was involved in it. Very sad, I mean, really sad. Career, where they often knock the career of the alienated parent, the target parent. They often, I've got to be careful what careers I choose here, but often they will knock the career as an indirect way at getting at the target parent. Living arrangements and travel. I wonder who he's traveling with. I wonder if there's anybody sharing the room with him. Well, he always traveled. He was never there. Activities, in terms of the activities that the other parent does. I had a situation where the father alienated the child from we talked about exotic dancers earlier today. I've had a couple of cases with exotic dancers where the child was completely alienated from the mother, refused to have anything to do with the mother. The child, because the mother works at things that she shouldn't be doing. Let's take a look at the case. The mother was going for her master's degree. The mother worked as an exotic dancer 2 nights a week because the father was not paying any child support. The mother told me, the only reason that I do that is because I get enough money those 2 evenings that I basically could be home with my child every night until the child goes to sleep, except for those 2 nights when there's a babysitter. And yet the father told the child, didn't get into details what, but here you have an issue of alienation based on the mother's career, I guess, or kind of work. I remember an 8-year-old boy, one of the first cases that I had about 30 years ago, told me, I'm sorry, it wasn't an 8-year-old, it was a 7-year-old boy, that told me that my mother didn't want to go to the mother. And, I asked for reasons, and of course I said, could you tell me anything that you remember? Tell me what you like doing with your mother. I'd like to hear some of that. What activities did you do? And she said, no, nothing. He said, nothing. Don't remember anything. Don't remember, don't remember, don't remember, don't remember. And then afterwards, and by the way, My mother gave every guy on the block a particular type of job. This was a 7-year-old kid. And I asked the kid, because it's not hard for me to act stupid, I asked the kid, what do you mean? I don't understand. And he said, you know. I said, no, I don't. Tell me what, I want to make sure that I understand it the way you understand it. He said, I don't know exactly what it means, but my father said it and he was very upset, so it must be something bad. How often do we hear a child tell us, we want sole custody? I remember a while ago, I asked a child, what does that mean? And the answer was, you know. You know. I said, well, I think I know, but I want to make sure that we understand it the same way. And the child said to me, I almost fell off my chair, well, if you don't know what it means, then you shouldn't be doing this kind of work. You know, kids grow up very quickly today. Unfortunately, in these situations, they grow up much, much quicker. I remember, it reminds me of the 2 5-year-olds, where one 5-year-old tells the other one, my mother found a contraceptive on the veranda. And the other 5-year-old says, really? What's a veranda? Anyway, be that as it may, these kids are exposed to a lot of information, and often it's indirect attacks. Often it's on the phone, talking to their friends, and knocking their associates or their family. The middleman syndrome, I think that was the term used by Claywar and Rivlin. And basically what we have here is that what happens is that when the parent speaks to the child about issues that should first be discussed with the other parent. I'd love to take you to Disney. And I would love to, and then all of a sudden goes to the other parent, and the other parent says, no, you had to discuss that with me. Why are you discussing this with the child? Now I'm going to be the bad guy because basically I had plans for that period of time as well. So some parents will set it up so that the child is in the middle. The child is exposed to information, and that becomes more of a tremendous, tremendous problem. So, when we take a look at this, discussing such issues can create alienation as well. There's an incredible pressure on the child to make a choice and have the child state that the time with one parent is better than the time with the other. It creates a conflict of loyalty and closes down communication. I have, a sense from some kids that I deal with. Imagine that you are a child. You're with your father, who basically pulls you toward him. You're triangulated. Pulls you, hey, yes, Daddy, I want to be with you all the time. No, I don't like going with Mommy. Yes, it's no fun there. I want to be. And then Mommy, you know what? I love you so much, I wish I could be with you all the time. And by the way, I want to be very clear. I find that many custody disputes, I'm not going to say the majority, are a result of parents listening to the children because the child says what each parent wants to hear, and the child often says what pleases that parent. Imagine a child who is being pulled on a day-to-day basis between the two parents. I don't know about you guys, but I think that for me, it might just be easier for me. The hell with it. I want to be with Dad. I don't want to have anything to do with Mom. Hey, I don't have to go back and forth. It becomes much easier. And consequently, we need to take that into account as professionals, that may be one of the dynamics. Please remember as well, very often, a child may be more secure with the target parent. That's not a reason to leave the child as it is. But the child may be more insecure with the alienating parent, and consequently may, because of that insecurity, will say what that parent, they believe that the love from that parent may be conditional, Whereas the other one, he will always be there. And that's why we always have to make sure to always be there. So understand, it is an incredible pressure on the child to do this. And we have to be careful with our reactions. One needs to recognize that some statements may be fully innocent. And basically, it is misconstrued and misinterpreted by the alienating parent. You have as well the issue, I don't know what's wrong with him syndrome, again, so aptly put out by Claywar and Rivlin. And basically what happens here is that they have a discussion, and then all of a sudden, the parent, the alienating parent, brings up a topic that will trigger off an emotional reaction. And as a result, the other parent blows a gasket, loses it, and then the other parent who basically set off the trigger makes a comment about the inability of the other. I don't know what's the matter with him. All I said was da 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 da. And this is in front of the child. And basically, it just perpetuates the belief that, that other parent always goes off the wall for when I was trying to have such a nice discussion with the individual. And again, as I said earlier, this is one of the reasons that alienated children do not want their parents often in the same place. Okay, I'm just going to go back to that. And this is something which is a thought. In some cases, as we'll see in a few minutes, is Joe here? We have how many hours more? 2? Give me a little bit longer, I'm going to take. And there's a need for the alienating parent to maintain a connection, even if a negative one, like in stalking. Now, it's an interesting thought that I had. When we take a look at the dynamics of stalking, very often, even though the relationship is a negative one, there's a the stalker perpetuates a narcissistic linking fantasy with the other one. In other words, we're split. He wanted the divorce, I didn't. So when I alienate the child, I still maintain, in a sick way, a relationship with that other parent, although a very negative one. I mean, it's a thought, that came to me when I was doing some research on stalking a little while ago. The ally syndrome. The alienating parent attempts to get the child to side with him or her against the other parent. And this I hear often. What do you think we should do? Do you think it is fair for your father to want to have the whole spring vacation? What would you do if you were me? Mom, I'm 6 years old. What are you asking me these questions? Do you think we should ask for sole custody? Do you see what I've had to live with for the past 10 years? So what it does is that it makes the child an ally, which is very problematic. It's to align the child. And basically, as I said earlier, it leads to statements like, we want sole custody. I gave you the example, moral judgments. That's another one that I find happening a great deal. And I talked about the religious parental alienation disputes, and I've been involved in a few of those. We don't believe in cheating the government. Well, that's not just religious, but that's another story. We don't believe in cheating the government out of taxes. In other words, holier than thou. I've always taught you that one needs to be married before living together with somebody. I want you to have a good relationship with your father, but, and again, this whole morality thing. Your mother, okay, I gave you that one before. Okay, and I gave you that one too. In this situation, as well as in others, if the child does not have significant contact with the target parent, if they're not given the opportunity, and this is something that I find that judges do not understand, I believe, in large part because of empowerment. I remembered, I think it was Judge Borenstein in Quebec. I remember her speaking to, I forget if it was 1 or 2 girls, 1 or 2 kids in the courtroom. I had made a recommendation. I think the kids have to hear it from the judge directly. And the judge, spoke to the girls, or to the, I forget if it was 1 or 2, it's a couple of years ago. And let's say it was 1 girl, and she said, well, I'm not going with my father. I don't want to have anything to do with my father. I just do not. And hey, I'm allowed to say it. I have my rights. I don't want to go. So the judge, and again, I'm not quoting her exactly, but I was there and I saw it. I heard it. The judge said, well, I'm going to give you a choice. You do have certain rights, and I am going to give you a choice. Either you will go with your father, I believe it was on an alternating week basis, or you will basically be attending a boarding school 50 out of 52 weeks of the year, and you will be basically spending the 2 weeks of vacation, 1 week with your father and 1 week with your mother. The choice is yours. Guess what? She started seeing her father. Again, you know, this idea of empowerment to me is extremely, I mean, we have, you know, the age of consent in Canada. We have this empowerment of, and I'm not against it. I really am not. But at a certain point, and it's as I think Brian showed yesterday, which was wonderful, you know, a lawyer arguing either this individual is lying or this individual is unable to assert his parental authority so that the kid listens to the parent. And again, that's what we're finding a great deal. I find also, by the way, very helpful use of photographs and videotapes in deprogramming. And kids will always have, well, what did you expect? They told me to smile. They were taking a picture. Of course you smile. I said, well, here you're not smiling. Here it shows that you're just doing. And again, photographs can be used and should be used in deprogramming. The threat of withdrawal, and I think I mentioned this, if you do not say that you want to live with me, I will get remarried, have other children, and they will be my only children. Children can be manipulated to fear that a parent will reject them if they express or show their love to the other one. Pattern of it. Now, very often the parent will communicate another theme. The rejected parent does not, has never loved or cared about the child. And as you'll see in a couple of minutes, how much time do I have, Joe? Okay. The rejected parent does not and has never loved or cared about the children. If we take a look at the reasons why alienation takes place, that plays a very, very large role. Particularly, as we'll see, when the issue of identity, that the identity of the parent comes from having the child with that parent. So for example, if I didn't work and I didn't, you know, I basically was involved 100% with raising my child, with my husband perhaps, traveling a greater deal of the time, and my spending 99% of the time with the child, understand, my losing that child, quote unquote losing, and going on an alternating week basis, my raison d'etre, whatever that word means, the reason for my being, for my identity is taken away. And often a person will fight for full custody and go to the extent of alienation. The child does not need the other parent. Some parents believe that. Hey, he was never there when when we lived together, and the child did quite well with me. He doesn't need that parent. And how often do we hear that all of a sudden that, the father becomes or the mother becomes involved only after litigation gets started? And that's used against the other parent. And again, the rejected parent is dangerous to the child in some ways, violent, abusive, or neglectful. Honey, if your dad or if your mom, and I'm equal opportunity, if your dad does anything that you feel uncomfortable, please call 911. Wait. Telephone. It is not right now 9 in the morning. Hello? Hi, how are you? How was your night? Everything okay? Everything was okay? There were no problems? Nothing happened that, made you feel bad? Okay, bye. 10 o'clock. Hi, how you doing? 12 o'clock. 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. What message is this child getting? I have to call you. I have to take care of you. I have to make sure that everything is okay. That often happens. You don't have to say he's dangerous, but the way you question the child. Here's another one, and this one I had a while ago, quite a few years ago. It was a case of a false allegation. Give me 2 more minutes. a case of a false allegation of sexual abuse, which turned out to be a false allegation. The child basically, and by the way, I loved the comment in terms of the difference between validating and evaluating, because the shopping around is an incredible thing. But anyway, this is what happened. The child was a preschooler. Hi, how was your weekend? Fine. Everything fine? Did your daddy give you a bath? Yes. And who washed you? Daddy. Did he wash you all over? Yes. Even in your private parts? Yes. You know nobody's supposed to touch you in your private parts. A couple of weeks later, how was your weekend? Da-da, da-da, da-da. What did you do? Da-da-da. Did you have a bath? Did your daddy give you a bath? Yeah. Did he wash you all over? Yes. In your private? Yeah. I told you nobody touches you in your private parts. A couple of weeks later, Mommy, Daddy touched me in my private parts and I told him don't do it. Come, let's go. And of course they went to a validator. And it went to court. And it went to court. It came out that it was false. And I've had a few cases where basically one of them, the woman, a false case of sexual abuse. The woman took, I forget how many experts it was, I think it was 9 of us. She took us to, not to discipline, she took us to put in complaints. There were 3 psychologists. The head of the college and the university that I taught at got letters. The Prime Minister got letters. The Minister of Justice got letters. I mean, the world got letters and went on the internet. And I remember some of the men's groups were asking me, why don't you respond? I say, I don't have to respond. You just read what this person wrote. You know where it's coming from. So please understand, when we take a look at the issue of, parental alienation, I mean, it is a serious issue. I said it, I think, on Friday. Alienating parents cheat the child out of their childhood. That is not time that can be made up. Even if a couple of years pass by, their developmental tasks, being part of the child's life, you cannot, and if anybody knows how, please let me know, how you cannot make up for this lost time. The child's identity, by seeing this father as being the son of Satan, impacts on the child, as you heard from that child. I think there are not many people that are willing to step up to bat. I think part of the reason is not just a question that they may not have all the tools, but I believe that not only do we have to educate the mental health professionals and the legal professionals, I think that the professional disciplinary committees have to also look at the details. Of course, you have to look at every complaint. But I think that, because many people know that there is a high probability that this will go to the, a complaint will be put in, people just shy away or just basically sit on the fence. Let us remember, and I'm going to start with what I started, let us not be the farmer who did not have time to build a fence because we were too busy chasing away the cows. Thank you.
Once again, please, let's thank Dr. Abraham Worenklein for being here today. That was a marvelous presentation. Thank you so much.